Hello, financial algebra people. Today's topic is going to be expenses. Some vocabulary here. The first word is revenue. Revenue is the income a business receives from selling its product. Revenue is the money that comes into the business. Now, the revenue equation, the amount of revenue that you're going to get, is P times Q, where P is the price you're selling the item for, and quantity is how many you sell them at. For example, if you're selling it for $50 and you sell 10 of them, 50 times 10 is $500 would be your revenue. Revenue is not the same thing as profit, because all businesses have expenses. Revenue minus the expenses is profit if that's positive. If you have more revenue than expenses, you're going to make money. Revenue minus expenses could be negative. If your expenses are too high, your revenue is too low. That would be a business loss. And then they call that the break-even point, where you don't make any money, you don't lose any money. That's when revenue equals expenses, or revenue minus expenses equals 0. Now, let's focus on expenses for a while. There's two main kind of expenses a business has. There's the variable expenses, which depends on the number of items produced. This could be, for example, the amount of raw materials you need to make the item. The more you make, the more the raw materials you have to buy. Or it could also include labor. If you're making more, you have to hire more people or maybe work overtime. Some expenses are fixed expenses, which do not change based on the quantity produced. This could be the rent for your business, your store, your factory. It could be the furniture you had to buy, or say the computer equipment you had to buy. So our expense equation, expenses are going to be the variable expenses plus the fixed expenses. Okay? Let's do a couple of examples. Here's an example of an expense equation. There's your variable expenses, because it depends on the quantity, and here are your fixed expenses. What this says is whatever your widget is, we're calling them widgets, it costs you $1.18 to produce each widget. And then $12,000 could be your fixed expenses, your rent, your computers, whatever. Okay? So what is the cost to produce 50,000 widgets? Well, cost to you is your expenses. That would be 1.18 times 50,000 plus 12,000. And so I don't have my calculator right here handy and ready to go, but here we go. 1.18 times 50,000 is equal to 59,000. And then your 12,000 is your fixed, so your total expenses are $71,000. Now, that's what it costs you to make 50,000 widgets. What does it cost per widget? Per widget would be 71,000 divided by the 50,000 and 71,000 divided by 50,000. It costs you 1.42 per widget, and since this is money, that's $1.42. Okay, now we have two equations. One is the demand function. If you recall last lesson, that's what we did, was demand function. Based on what the price is, that's going to affect the demand. Q is a function of P. If you remember how this works, that negative 112 says that for every dollar you increase the price, you expect the demand to go down 112. Demand, as the price goes up, the demand goes down. And this 4,500 would be theoretically what the demand would be if the price was 0. And then we have an expense function like we just saw. 3 is the variable expense. It costs you $3 to make each widget, and 1,800 are your fixed expenses. So here E is a function of Q, Q is a function of P. We want to express E as a function of Q. What would your expenses be based on, my bad. E is already a function of Q. Q is a function of P. We want to write E as a function of P. Well, that requires substituting. We take this expression right here, which is our Q, and we substitute it into there. And what we end up getting is expenses are equal to 3.0 times negative 112p plus 4,500 plus 1,800. I plug that in for Q. And now this is just a little bit of math. Some of you might remember how to do this. This is called distributing. You do the 3 times the negative 112 is negative 336p plus 3 times 4,500 is 13,500 plus the 1,800. You don't distribute the 3 times the 1,800. Now you add these two together, and your expenses are negative 336p plus, when you add those two together, you get 15,300. And this would be an expense function in terms of price. One more example to do, and this one is going to be if I can find it. Hold on, let me pause. Okay, we have another expense function. These are expenses to produce a certain quantity of widgets. Q stands for quantity. 1.10 are the variable expenses, and 4,200 are the fixed expenses. How many do you have to sell? What's the quantity of widgets you have to sell at $2.50 each to break even? If you remember break even is when revenue equals expenses. And our expenses are given by the equation above. Recall earlier in the class, the revenue expense equation, revenue is price per quantity, and in our case the price is $2.50, so that would be your revenue. So set the 250Q equal to expenses. Here we have revenue equal to expenses. Well, we're trying to find what Q, what's the quantity which would make this equation work. So that means solve for Q. Subtract the 1.10Q, you get 1.40Q equals 4,200. Divide by 1.40. Quantity is 3,000. If you sell 3,000 of these widgets, you would break even. More than that, you would make some money. Less than that, you wouldn't make any money.